Welcome back. We're joined today by George, who lives here in Utah, lives in the Salt Lake City area. And while we will not be hitting George with stones today, George is a member of the gay community. And just go. Tell us about yourself, your background, and...
Well, okay. I work on the computers at the local 911 center. For the greater Salt Lake area, not for Salt Lake City itself.
Mm-hmm.
I used to dispatch and take 911 calls there. I've lived in Utah since I was 8. Quite a while now. What else do you want to know?
What is your religious affiliation?
I'm atheist.
Atheist.
Now, how did you come to that?
So I was actually brought up to a different religion, something that most people don't encounter. It's called Juju. Which is kind of a mild form of voodoo. It has Catholic leanings, and basically it's kind of the study of luck. Worship is the wrong term, and study is the wrong term, but study is closer.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically, I'm not even sure how to describe it. You go around and you gather luck to yourself, and you eschew bad luck. Which is interesting. I always considered myself to be a lucky person, and you know that plays into certain things. I've gotten all my cars by sheer fortune, you know. Not that I haven't paid for them, but they came to me at the right times and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that seems to line up if you pay attention to it. But then you can look at expressions like, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So if you're prepared when the opportunity arises, then there's that. So,
right.
Not much else to say about that, really. If you have questions about it, I'm happy to answer.
Oh, well, I certainly do have questions on that, actually. Just I've never heard of that, and it's always lovely to kind of hear of a new belief system. Now, so your parents practice this?
My mom does. I'm not sure how much of a believer she is anymore. My dad was Catholic. I think he's probably atheist now.
Right.
All right.
So.
So how long did you actually practice that, or like at what point did you kind of maybe pull away from that or start?
I practiced it from when my mother introduced me to the idea when I was very young, probably about 4th grade, so I was 9. And then I actually recently gave it up about 4 or 5 months ago. I told you about it, actually.
Yeah, and you were, to my understanding, an atheist before you even sort of gave it up.
As far as the Christian
aspects of it.
Yes.
So would it be fair to say that this is kind of, it sounds to me something similar to Santeria, which is sort of this, you can curse people or bless people. It's kind of this, something that like Mexican Catholics are fond of. I don't really know much about Santeria, like what its history is, but it strikes me that it might be similar to the voodoo thing that has like, this, like it was something that was native and then Christianity came by, and supplanted it, but didn't try to snuff it out. Basically to make Christianity, to tack Christianity onto it, sort of.
Sort of. So what happened with things like voodoo or juju or Santeria is the slaves brought it over from Africa. You know, a lot of their rituals and whatnot from dancing around the campfire.
Right.
And the Christians, in a very normally Christian way, attempted to subvert that by saying, well, this deity that you worship here is the same as our saint here, you know?
Right.
And so a lot of that got translated across, but people, slaves didn't give up on the faith. They would just find ways of hiding it. So,
right.
Those candles that you see in the Latin aisle at the grocery store, those have a lot of roots and that sort of thing.
Interesting. So I would like to know a little bit more about the details of like how you fell away from that. So because apparently you fell away from the Christian aspect of it. So like the Sky Daddy idea is something you gave up 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, that was long ago.
But so it's more like you just recently let go of the superstitions of that faith.
That's true.
That's interesting. I like the separation there, because you know we have people. I mean, think of like Jeff, for example, where it's like he's kind of really given up on the faith or the idea of the faith, but at the same time, like the superstitious and the supernatural aspect of it, he still can't quite let go.
Well, and I feel like it's funny to me the way people can compartmentalize that kind of stuff, because you'll have people who are Catholic, and with my own background in Catholicism, it's funny for me to think about that. Catholicism is this kind of Christianity that really embraces, community-wise at least, embraces a lot of the more mystical aspects of Christianity. Like Protestant Christians don't really have that. Protestant Christians are very simple. There's less ritual. There's no exorcism. Well, I shouldn't say there's no exorcisms now, because it looks like people have found out that they can make money off of that. But typically speaking, or I suppose when you divide them, Catholicism definitely has more of like a mystical bent. And so it's funny that people can leave Catholicism behind, and not just George, but they still believe in psychics or ghosts. Right. Your mother might kind of be an example.
Oh, exactly.
She's got all these superstitious things that are she thinks are powerful and can impact the real physical universe. But that's weird to me. I mean, I never really believed in ghosts myself or psychics or anything like that. I feel like the scams are usually pretty obvious. But
I spent some time ghost hunting.
Really? Mm-hmm. You and my mom get along.
But my thing was that once I left the religion behind, I sort of applied the lens of like, well, what reason would I have to believe in psychic ghosts, what have you? And pretty much it fails on all the same counts. That's why I find it interesting that you left the one behind, but did you still really believe in it, or did you just you liked the ritual, you liked the practice? What did you think it was?
I wasn't really sure. So it's easy to trick yourself into thinking that things happen. Mm-hmm. Especially in something like that, what they say is, how do you phrase it? What they say is that it's just kind of something a little bit more leaning your way that happens, as far as fortune. And so long as you keep seeing fortune head your way, you keep that perspective, then it's easy to keep.
Yeah, that helps you realign and see all the good things that do happen and focus more on those things as opposed to dwelling on the negative things that happen and letting that override your life.
Mm-hmm. And it's very easy to justify with things like, well, we don't really understand everything that the brain does. Maybe it has some sort of influence outside the body.
Right.
Psychic power. Maybe it's just another way of accessing psychic power. Keeping up those rituals, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's actually interesting though, because I just had a discussion about like rituals and where they come from in our like primitive brain, and how like in our like evolutionary process, like way back when humans even first started, that's this idea of like ritual, and it's called something like self like awareness or something in that sense, where our brains are programmed to recognize faces.
Right.
Like, so that it's like a survival instinct, because then we can recognize friend or foe and things like that. But then that translates to, since we're so good at recognizing that, we become too good and we see things like outside of that.
See it everywhere, right?
And then, so like the faces and the toast and things like that. But it also applies to your like paranoia as a survival trait, where it's like if you hear leaves rustling, then if you assume the negative, if you assume that it's something bad, like it's tiger,
right,
then you're going to be ready for that, and you actually have a better chance of survival. Whereas if you shrug it off,
right,
then if it is a tiger, you're screwed,
right,
kind of thing. And that like apparently like a lot of the psychology analysis of that, or like the neurosciences, have also seen that that's part what lends to these like desires to see the benefit like always coming towards you.
Right.
Like to recognize the things that are always benefiting you, as opposed to realizing that it's benefiting a whole bunch of people, but your self-awareness of that helps you, gain and grow. And if you see these kind of positive things and focus on them, then that's actually something that keeps you alive or develops you as a person, basically.
Right, where it's like 99 out of 100 times when the leaves rustled, it wasn't a tiger.
Exactly.
But you thought it was a tiger every single time, and then the one time that it was a tiger, you were like, "See, tiger."
Yeah, and then that too.
And then you forget that the 99 other times turned out to be nothing.
Yeah, but the thing that's interesting about that is that it's beneficial to you to always assume that, to always assume that the cry wolf is correct, as opposed to Like, it's not been correct 20 times. I mean, it's really not. Like, in reality, we don't do that anymore. You know, like, as you know, we live so much longer that we get used to these kind of patterns where now, like, when I go camping and the leaves rustle, I don't worry about it. You know, in fact, I talk myself out of it because I'm like, the chances of it being a tiger are,
right.
you know, this many. You know, and so it's like, you know, we've adjusted, but at the same time, that primitive brain is still
the mechanisms
wanting
are still
to
there,
be like, you know what, maybe just in case, because it's actually safer to assume that it's something bad,
sure,
and then have it not be. This is actually goes all the way to Pascal's wager for religion. That's where these people, a lot of people still have that fear of like, oh well, you know what, maybe this is true, and since hell sounds really bad, I'm gonna err on the side of caution. Mm-hmm. And so that's actually part of the whole point of me bringing that up, is it actually does relate back to how, you know, the religion of how it all ties together, and your fears that the religions play off of.
Right.
Another thing that strikes me about that sort of thing, so when I realized that, I'm going to need to give you a little backstory on this.
Oh please, no, that's what we want.
So one thing that the tenets of Juju teaches is don't share information with people outside your family, because knowledge is power.
Right.
And everyone knows that to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And so, another thing that does is, if your beliefs are never brought to somebody else, then they don't have an opportunity to ridicule them, and so it's very easy to maintain that faith. And if you do happen to bring in somebody else and they say, well, that sounds stupid, well, you can just say you just don't understand. You've never seen it. You know,
so what was it 5 to 6 months ago, what was it that finally made you be... You had been divested of Christianity for so long. What was it that finally made you say, I don't need to bother with the Juju anymore?
I hadn't really been practicing for very long and still found myself to be pretty lucky as a person. And so I applied the atheist perspective to it and thought, well, this is still happening even though I don't practice anymore.
Right.
When I do practice, nothing else new seems to happen.
Right.
There's no renewal of I don't get extra quarters on the street or anything like that.
Right.
Right.
So what does that really say?
Mm.
You know. Another thing where I was going to go with this is one thing I see about religion is that there's so much family involved with it, especially here in Utah.
Oh yeah.
And one thing that really troubled me about it is one of the tenets is don't feel sympathy for other people, because if you do, then you take their bad luck into you. And so I was taught that from a very young age, to not feel sympathy for other people, and let me tell you, that's a terrible thing to teach people.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
Humans are good at not feeling sympathy already.
That's true.
We don't need it codified.
And so I was very upset at my mom for, passing that sort of thing down to me, but then I let it go because she had it passed down to her from her mother,
Right.
who had it passed down from her mother,
Right.
and so on in that fashion.
Right.
It's not really something that I can hold them accountable for, but
it's just something you can improve on.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
oh, I'm sorry. Let me finish. So,
please.
The way I see this translating to here in Mormon land, in the land of Zion, is there's so much pull to be with your family and to groupthink with your family.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a lot of that here. And I think that there are a lot of people out there who have doubts and who are afraid to explore them.
Right.
For that sort of reason.
So did this affect you, like, as you were growing up, though? Like, your religion kind of told you not to share with others and to share what you really are with others as far as your belief system goes. Did this, was this prominent, or did you actually get to fly under the radar because you had this specific thing of not sharing what you were? So did everyone just kind of assume? Did you fit in better almost because of that? No,
actually, I was, to borrow a term, quite the outcast.
Yeah.
Here,
We've chosen our terms well.
You really have. I did not fit in very well with groups at school. There were times when large groups of people beat me up.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Was this due to an emerging sexual awareness that you had about who you were attracted to, or was this just you were not in their group?
It was a little bit of both.
Okay.
So one thing that I had never been taught the idea that men don't hug each other, and so when I moved here, conversing with people or whatever, I go up and hug them, and I was called gay, and at very young ages. I moved here when I was 8, and so you know, from 3rd grade on, you know, people said, he's gay, you're gay, and, you know, they use the more, what's the more caustic term, fag, quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that when I was growing up. Fag was really prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I got pushed out a lot for that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but were they really just calling you that because, I mean, just because they're name calling, or are they really, like, were you having some sort of awareness that you might actually be gay, or?
It's really hard to know, to be honest with you.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so there's another point I was going to make on that. Oh, so here's another one. I did a very simple hypnotism trick once in like 5th grade, and people thought that I was a devil worshiper ever after that.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
And so I played into that quite a bit. In 7th grade, I started wearing a long black leather trench coat, just like the trench coat mafia.
Right.
Columbine. You know?
Oh,
so
okay.
that was years before. Yeah, I started doing that before it was popular.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Bit of an emo phase back before emo was cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
quite like that. So I had very few friends, and yeah, it was difficult living like that. Very difficult. And part of that was, you know, being outside of the faith. You know, it was very clear that was not Mormon, whatever I was.
Right.
And so people, I think, I really don't have a way of knowing for certain, but I think that people saw that as, well, he's outside of this faith, and so he's
Right.
clearly of the devil, or the devil is using him as a tool, or what have you.
Right.
Were your friends, the few friends that you did have, were they Mormon? Any of them?
I don't think so, honestly.
Really?
But I don't know that for certain either.
That's interesting.
Well, and it's hard to say, you know, what people think. You know, you don't know necessarily all their motivations, but it's something that we've discussed before. The one thing that religion is definitely good at, in my estimation, is that it puts people in groups. We're over here and you're over there, and we're God's chosen people, and you're what we outcast. You're something that we don't like. You don't live your life how we think that you should.
Yeah.
And in some situations, you have this other group that they've put over there who says, well, actually, we're God's chosen people, and you're doing X, Y, Z wrong. You know, and that can be a cause for violence, but then you can kind of have this one-sided violence, you know, because I think for all the pride parades and all the things that the gay community might do, it's not necessarily a close-knit organization as the same sense as a religion can be, because a religion meets weekly or more, you know, and they all have, hey, here's this litany of things that we believe and we're going to fight for. I mean, either literally fight for or like politically fight for. And then you have the gay community, who's just a bunch of people who have like maybe one thing in common.
Yeah, maybe one or two. And that's the thing, is that most of our social groups exist so that we can find each other without fear of persecution.
Right.
You know? So a hiking group that is for gay people is just, you know, it's not that people who are not gay are not welcome to go. It's just that we want somewhere to go where we don't have to worry about what other people are thinking about us.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
just where we can relax a little bit more.
Yeah, somewhere where you're understood and accepted.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate that in today's society that we have to do that sort of thing.
Right.
You know? It's not easy for me to go up to some random guy who I feel attracted to and say, hey, I'd like to go out with you. Because his reaction could be anything from, hey, I'm not gay, to pounding my face.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's definitely harder in that sense. I mean, you know, I don't know how to describe that, because I don't want to say it's like you're odd man out, because it's not, in my opinion, it's not odd, but it is still that you don't know who is what, basically. You know, it's so weird to think that it's so easy for, you know, like heterosexual couples essentially to you know, find each other.
Well, sure.
But it is also odd, because I mean I've hit on girls that turned out to be lesbians, you know, so it's like every now and then it crosses our way too.
Well, yeah, and I've had gay guys hit on me, and I've, you know, had to say something to the effects of, well, no thank you, or that's flattering, but no, or that time that guy wouldn't stop putting his arm around me, I gave him a little shove. I think the third time I was like, no, really, you know. But it's just
But that's the point, I guess. In the end, that should be the reaction. Is at the least you're just saying, decline.
No, thank
the
you.
reaction
Yeah.
should not be I'm going to pound you in the face now.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And
Now,
there's so much pressure here and by here I mean in the United States,
right,
for straight men to not have any sort of association with being gay.
right.
Straight men can't even touch each other. It's that sort of thing.
It's true.
I was gonna say,
Unless
I
we're hitting
touch
each
you
other.
all the time.
Right.
I know. What does that say about you?
Wow.
No, I'm joking.
Let's not go there.
Remember, as long as you don't look each other in the eye. I'm just trying to be lighthearted because this is a very depressing subject when you think about it.
That's true.
So,
yeah.
So, with the religious persuasion being what it is in this state, have you ever felt really sort of put upon by any major groups? Do you really feel that perhaps what's the name, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, perhaps you may be familiar with them? Do you feel like they have done any? I mean, and I don't mean like in a vast political sense, because I'm sure we'll get to that. But do you feel like there's anything they have directly put upon you, or really any religious institution or any institution?
I feel as if there are some instances where it couldn't happen a little bit. I remember one time running into a group of missionaries and chatting with them for a little bit, and what I told them was that they were in my neighborhood, and what I told them was that everyone in my neighborhood is already Mormon or they're gay.
Right.
And what they said was hopefully the former. But, I mean,
So I can't imagine that made you feel very good.
Well, no, it didn't. But what do you do? It's their perspective, and
Sure.
and they're welcome to it. I found it a little bit surprising because I have a number of Mormon friends who would never have said anything like that.
Right.
So, there are small examples like that which exist every here and there, but by and large, no. I have Mormon friends, like I just said.
There's an element of the age of the return, or excuse not the return, but the age of the missionaries, where they're still just coming right out of that high school phase, where as we just described, fag was being thrown around for every little slight,
Right.
If you did anything wrong, you were a fag. It was like a big deal in my time. So it's like, there's part of that aspect that's unfortunate about the age of their missionaries is the fact that they're still very young, very naive. They've learned very little. And,
That's true.
And a lot of their taught prejudices are still overriding the things that they're going to be learning as they grow. Well, no, I mean, it's exactly like why military. It's good to get them in young, brainwash them early. I mean, I'm pro-military, but at the same time, that's what it. I mean, I understand that that's its goal.
Right.
Because you want to break this person down to its base elements and train it to do X and have it just go do X and think of nothing else. Mm-hmm. And even the missionary school is a lot like that, from what I've heard from other missionaries.
Yeah. Now, the Mormon Church has stated they have a doctrine called the Law of Chastity, which pretty much says that sex is for marriage only, and anything that happens outside the bounds of marriage, masturbation included, even sexual thoughts are not to be indulged, and it defines marriage as being between a man and a woman, and hence anything gay is pretty much out. And I believe they published a pamphlet in 2007. I think it's called God Loves His Children, something to the, I might not be getting it exactly right, but something to the effects of that. And it pretty much restates these doctrine policies, and one of the things that it says is that Mormons are not supposed to be intolerant, and that gay members can be in good standing in the church, but they have to not act on their attractions. Mm-hmm. How does that make you feel?
I have all sorts of problems with this.
Okay, please expound.
I remember an incident, it was quite recent and in the news, where one of the members of the Mormon church, who is gay but is not practicing, mm-hmm. continued to have friends outside of the church who were gay. Mm-hmm. And he was told by his...
so he was not a practicing Mormon?
He was a practicing Mormon, he was not a practicing gay.
Okay, right.
And so his bishop told him that he had to stop hanging out with those friends.
Right.
Even though the religion is supposedly tolerant.
Don't be intolerant. And,
Right.
Right.
And so he said that he's not going to do that, and he was excluded from the church.
So he was actually officially excommunicated.
I believe that is the case. I
Okay.
would love to check the facts on that before making any
Right.
sort of definite statement on it. It was in Q Salt Lake, I believe, which is short for Queer
the
Salt Lake
magazine.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, but the
Oh, it's a magazine?
even if
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
okay.
on
I was wondering if this was like
primarily.
a location on the map that I was unaware of.
There's a giant queue actually.
right, no,
I was just like, what, really?
it's where they go to hang out.
We call it the avenues.
Okay, so even if we'll have to fact check on whether he was excommunicated or not, but he was certainly sanctioned for having gay friends while not practicing his gayness. So even that wasn't enough. So that kind of seems at odds with. I mean, and that's hard to say. I mean,
Well, it still says a lot about the tolerance level.
But I guess
you
if-
can't even have gay friends or friends outside of the religion.
but I guess if you're saying, I mean, look at it from another standpoint. If instead of gay, this person was an alcoholic, and he was coming and saying, I'm not drinking anymore, but I'm gonna hang out with these alcoholic friends, and then the church said, well, we don't think you should do that. That that's sort of a matter of personal privacy as far as I'm concerned. But I guess if they
I don't know
really
if you
think
have
that it's
personal
bad,
privacy in the church.
right? Well, that's the church's problem. But I mean, from their perspective, I'm thinking is I can see their standpoint in a sense, but well,
It just goes to that same thing about, where I say religion divides everyone. It's
Sure.
just a way of dividing us further. And this just sounds like a, governmental. It's the same reason that the government shouldn't determine, like, the gay marriage situation or any of that stuff, because it's not the government's business. I mean,
Right.
as far as the governments are concerned, marriage is just about tax brackets based
Right.
on,
Yeah.
and medical, I want to say rights or something,
it's like visitation rights.
Thank you.
And,
Yeah, visitation
next
rights.
of kin and end of life decisions.
Exactly. That's
and-
really what marriage is even there for from a governmental standpoint.
Right.
And that's why the government shouldn't give a damn who you marry, especially as long as they're human.
Right, but I guess I would think that the church coming down on this particular individual, part of the problem is that, well, from their standpoint, what he's doing or potentially doing would be wrong, but they're basing that doctrine on, as far as I'm concerned, things that they can't prove. From my perspective, they're saying, well, a long time ago, someone had a magical experience, and now they're saying you can't hang out, and now we're saying you can't hang out with these people, and that's kind of ludicrous to me.
Well,
but
there's so many weird facets of that story in particular, because it's like, why is he not trying to use the bishop, use that gentleman as a way to reach out to these other gay gentlemen and show them, what they're doing is wrong and not right by God.
And that was the point I was going to make about it. If these are people who need to be in some fashion saved, why would you not want to continue to be an influence on them?
Mm-hmm.
It seems very counterintuitive to what I would expect from the religious.
I think it's because they're actually more afraid of his viewpoints becoming more tolerated in the church, and that's why they want to,
Keep it at a distance.
Because unfortunately, they know that that's the better viewpoint, and they're losing that battle.
Yeah. So back to your question about my stance on this. Another thing is that basically what that's saying is that if I'm Mormon, I can choose to live with a woman who I would not physically be able to come together with.
right,
Or I could live an entire life of celibacy.
Right.
And for some reason, when this is brought to the attention of any given Mormon, the answer is, well, that's because God loves you even more and wants to put you through this test.
Right. How do you feel about that?
I think it's patently ridiculous.
I think it's interesting, this idea, because I've heard this before, that and not just from Mormons necessarily, but this idea from Christianity that you're being tested. God made you gay because it's a pop quiz, and I hope you studied because I hope you know what the right answer is. And I mean, the idea that life is a test at all, which a lot of religions kind of
That's
tout. The idea that life is some sort of sick game, and God is looking to see who fails and who doesn't, even though technically he should already know the outcome, so why even engage in that? But
Sure.
yeah, the idea that even beyond the regular tests that all of us are having, you have an extra test. And it means that did you actually hear that it means God loves you more because he's testing you more?
Oh yeah, this is something that's come out not just from Mormons.
I see. No, I've never actually heard the idea that God loves gay people more, and therefore he wants them to make their lives unbearable. That you have to either be celibate or
No,
live a life of quiet
there's
desperation.
some sort of saying that's something along the lines of like, God challenges those who he loves the most. So it's the ones that have the free, willy-nilly, easy life that he doesn't really care about. It's the people that he like throws trials and tribulations at that he really loves. So the women that get raped, the people he determines are gay, and suffer those kind of lifestyles are the ones he loves the most, because he only challenges the ones that he loves the most. Pretty much the same way he treated Job.
So God has favorites.
Didn't you know?
Yeah, because
no, I didn't. I thought
God plays a lot of favorites in the Bible.
I know that we're supposed to deal with equality, but I didn't realize that God wasn't beholden to that.
No,
I didn't know.
Well, I think the bigger point
not.
is the fact that you pointed out. God knows the answer. He he's omnipotent. He knows all. And so when he made you gay and you decided to act upon those feelings or beliefs or however you want to word it, that he already knew that you weren't going to pass, but he still gave you that challenge anyway. And now that you failed, you're going to burn in hell eternal. So good luck.
All right. Okay. So this raises.
Sorry, devil's advocate from the Catholic perspective.
No, I'm okay with this. Why, if everything's already kind of predetermined in that sense, why would I bother with prayer? Can anyone explain that to me?
This is something that George Carlin talked about a lot.
Did he?
Yeah, George Carlin had a whole bit about basically prayer, and people would say to him, apparently, this is in the bit, that God has a plan, and I got out on the street today, and my car was hit by another car and it's totaled, and I don't have a car anymore. Well, it's all part of the plan. And then people pray for stuff, and then they don't get it, and they say, well, it was just part of the plan. God doesn't want me to have it. And then exactly, what was the point of praying in the first place?
Right.
If I can pray to get something, either I was going to get it because it was part of the plan, or I was never going to get it because it wasn't part of the plan.
Right.
Praying doesn't do anything.
Right.
It can't affect anything if these are the rules. And it's something that leads back to, and I don't have any of these on hand, but I know this has been done multiple times when they do the study for the power of prayer, and they have found time and again that it doesn't. People who pray to get when they have cancer have the exact same survival rate as people who don't.
Right.
And so that puts us farther out there. So
That's really interesting.
Did you have any experience with that? Like, did you
ever try to pray your gay away?
Yeah, basically.
I never felt any particular urge to pray the gay away.
You didn't feel the shame.
There's no tenets in Juju say that the gay is bad.
Right.
Have more gay.
If you want.
If you'd like it.
Pile up all the gay you'd like. Juju doesn't care.
No. I have tried praying. It didn't do anything for me.
Okay. Did you pray for more gay?
No, actually, I didn't.
If you didn't try to pray your gay away, did you pray for more gay? I don't know what that would look like exactly.
There's websites you can go to for that.
Oh, to get more gay.
It seems a little more solid. Than
right.
What did you pray for?
I prayed to try and figure out what was happening. What is their deity, things like that. Some sort of sign,
Right.
The sort of thing that people would pray for
if
they go from being some sort of heathen to being Christian.
Got it.
So, nothing. I also, once or twice, prayed on behalf of friends. Nothing that they didn't get for themselves.
What? Tell me a little bit about being gay. Like how you, like when you finally self-identified with it. What trials and tribulations you had to become comfortable with it, or was it pretty much instantaneous for you, or any that?
So imagine that your experience would be different. I mean, one of the things that we talked about with Eric last week, he talked about for what he went through is being raised Mormon. There was so much shame. Not being raised Mormon, I imagine, at least in some respect, your experience would have been different.
I didn't experience a lot of shame,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't really talk about it because other people always denigrated being gay.
Right.
So it was hard to find other people to talk to, and really I didn't for a long time. I first noticed an attraction to men back in 4th grade or 5th grade or so.
Mm-hmm.
My math teacher was kind of cute.
Mm-hmm.
After that, a friend of mine who probably has some mental issues started. He and I started feeling around. That was 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it was just a slow progression to starting to tell other people I'm attracted to men.
Right. Do you know? I know all gay people don't know each other, but
we have a list.
No, I know there's a list.
There's a book club.
Do you have a lot of experience with gay men who are members of the church? Have you met people like? Can you speak even in a hearsay kind of fashion about like what their experience might be?
I know one or two, and I know of a few others aside from that. So the ones that I know feel a lot of shame as to who they are,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still internalized, and by that I mean they have moved beyond it when they're dealing with other people and they're able to talk about it, but they still believe in the church. One of them has been excommunicated, and he still goes. And I find that really sad that he would
That he could be rejected to that level,
and still want to attend. And
wow,
and still
that's
believe
that's like the wife, that keeps going back to the husband who hits her. That's
easily one of the most tragic figures I know. And others who I have heard in the hearsay sense, very similar stories to that.
right.
I have found ex-Mormon gay people to be some of the most psychologically messed up people I know.
Really? So the damage is really apparent.
Yeah, and it's trying to bring that side of well, I am gay and I still believe in this, into one being.
Right.
Right.
Very difficult to deal with. I mean, what's the term for that? Cognitive dissonance. That's kind of a big thing for that. I mean, how many excuses do you have to make up?
Yeah.
To reach that point where
Yeah.
where you can deal with these two things.
So what? The only thing I can think to focus on, like, I mean, you sound like you haven't had too much strife as far as, like, you had some growing up, but now that you're an adult, you're openly gay, you don't seem like you really have any run-ins with the church that are, an issue.
Right.
Although we had, not 3-4 months ago, the guy that got curbed for being gay downtown.
Supposedly, yeah. I feel like after the fact, I heard a lot of conflicting stories over, well, maybe he was being a jerk, and maybe there were no anti-gay.
I feel like I should probably say something about that since it's come up. He was gay. However, he was dealing in drugs, and while that is a completely different topic for discussion, apparently he didn't pay people he owed, and that's why they curb stomped him.
Okay, so apparently it wasn't
was
because
not
he was
a
gay.
hate crime, but he blamed it on being a hate crime, which he did not do a service to the committee for that.
Yeah, certainly not.
That makes a lot more sense now.
So, the elephant in the room, Prop 8. I know we're not exactly striking when the iron is hot on this one, but I think that any kind of talk that we're going to have going forward between the gay community and the LDS community, this is kind of a launching pad because they've made their view very clear that marriage is for a man and a woman, and they're clearly going to fight tooth and nail on every level to ensure that there are the separate water fountains and there are the separate bathrooms, and you guys are over here and the rest of us are over here. And I've actually found it really heartening that I think I've just my personal experience. I've heard a lot of Mormons, and Mormons I know are probably more on the liberal end, but I've heard Mormons say, this is not the kind of thing I want my church standing up for.
Right.
But that aside, the institution that is the Mormon Church has made its stance very clear that you are not an equal citizen. You can have domestic partnerships, but, you know, let's be honest, separate but equal didn't work
One at a
in the
time.
civil rights movement, and it's not going to work now.
Right.
And so, you know, how do you feel about the institution of the Mormon Church? I mean, do they? We talked about how, you know, do you feel like they're like people coming down on you for being who you are?
Let's discuss this from the atheist perspective.
Okay.
The top of the church, what's his name?
Moroni.
No, I have no idea.
Oh, I thought you meant the statue.
The living top of the church.
No,
guy
the
in
new
charge.
prophet since Hinckley died. I have no idea who it is.
Monson, I think, is his
Couldn't
name.
care less.
He,
Guy. Yeah.
He supposedly he's the one who gives revelations out.
Right. God's infallible wingman, just like the Pope.
Right. But as an atheist, you don't believe in God, right? And so his revelations are entirely coming from within.
Right.
And he's a man who is steeped in traditions from years ago. You know, he's a little elderly.
Right.
So the things that he's putting forward are things that he was brought up to, in much the same way that I talked about you know, my mother being brought up to things that her mother was brought up to.
Right.
Right.
Sure.
Same chain exists, and so he is just passing that right on down. He feels like he's doing right.
Mm-hmm.
He may actually even feel like there's a deity. Honestly, I don't believe a lot of people, the higher ups in the Mormon Church, do believe there's a deity. I think there's a lot of doubt up there.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think there has to be when you're that steeped in it.
that is certainly a possibility, and it's hard for us to know.
And it could just be a product of the groupthink, you know, because whatever revelations he's getting, you know, from the atheist perspective, he's getting them internally, or he's getting them from the social expectation of, hey, you're supposed to be having these revelations, and, you know, this is what we expect the revelations are going to sound like.
Right.
But you're right, we can't know.
So, I find it really hard to hold that against the Mormon Church,
Mm-hmm.
being as it comes from one man and from the quorum. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
I think so. There's,
The
yeah.
There's like 2 quorum levels.
Yeah.
There's like the quorum of the 12 and then the quorum of like the 72 or something.
Something like that, yeah.
So I'm not really sure if that answers your question about it.
Well, I guess, here's the thing.
Answers the
My
question.
my particular view of, because I notice when Mormon apologetic groups make their cases against people who are saying, you know, this or this about the Book of Mormon or the doctrine or the various belief structures or why they believe things they believe, one of the cries that comes up immediately is that, oh, you hate Mormons, or you're anti-Mormon is the phrase they like to throw around. And I don't think of myself as anti-Mormon at all. I wouldn't define myself that way. But certainly not on the personal level. On the personal level, I can honestly say I've never met a Mormon who I didn't like. And I had Mormon friends in high school, and probably before that. I didn't think about it really before that then. I have Mormon friends now. Religion tends to not come up a lot. We all kind of leave whatever our beliefs are over here, and then we go do our thing. Right. But and this goes beyond just the Mormon Church. This goes to all religions. I see them as institutions that are divisive and harmful to human existence, and I root for their downfall. But that doesn't mean that I meet someone on the street and they're Mormon, they mention it to me, or they're wearing a pin that says, hey, I'm Mormon. That doesn't make me hate that person, but that institution I rail against, frankly. I do. I rail against it. It's not just, I'm not benign in how I feel about it. I don't like it. I think it's harmful. And so while you say that you don't want to blame this person because he's just got his beliefs that are handed down, and he's just a cog in the machine, but I think, you know, at some point you have to stand up and say, you know, maybe this is wrong. Maybe what we're doing is harming people whose only fault is that they were born gay, or they chose to be gay. I don't even care. I don't even think it matters. You took a plane, or you drove to Gay Town. You're in Gay Town, and now this institution is coming down on you for that. And I've seen the news stories of people who kill themselves because they're gay, and they can't square it with society. They can't square it with how their parents, who are religious, feel they should square it. They can't do it. They can't manage it, and it's too hard. And that's it for them. They've had enough. And I can't look the other way as far as these institutions are concerned. I can't just say, well, that's just how, it's just tradition renewing itself. And it's part of the reason for why I want to do Outcasts in Zion, to say, no, let's talk about this. Let's not just say it's a tradition that everybody's just a cog in the wheel. Oh well.
Right.
No, I want to stop it and talk about it.
And that's the thing, is that not everyone is a cog in the wheel. The ones who you and I talk to on the street,
Right.
The people who aren't the bishops, who aren't part of the quorums, who aren't the prophet.
Right.
They're the ones who we can talk to and say, look at me. I'm a person. I'm a good person. I do my thing, just like everyone else does. And your faith is harming me.
Right.
And that's really sad.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's the thing that they support. I mean, it's the thing that they pay tithing to.
Because they don't pay attention. Because they don't know.
But should that? That's the thing. Should that be
problem.
forgivable? Should that be forgivable? People say,
Yeah.
well, the Mormons I talk to say, well, that's not what I wanted my church to stand for. That's not what I'm about. But where did the money that the church gave for Prop 8, that the money that a church based in Utah sent to California to affect the passing of a law, where did that money come from? It comes from the tithing. It comes from the financial juggernaut that the Mormon church is, and to say, well, they don't pay attention to it, I feel like that shouldn't excuse them. I mean, and this is something we talked about before, when your religion is determining, in your mind at least, and even possibly in reality, when it's determining your eternity, how can you have this pedestrian attitude towards it? And that's putting out the political activism aside.
Yeah.
How can you have this pedestrian attitude towards it at all? And then, when your church is doing such political activism and affecting other people's lives in other states, that's one of the things I've heard about, the joke I've heard about gay marriage. If you don't want a gay marriage, don't have one.
Yeah.
Because again, it's like, George, if you get married and your husband, your spouse, whatever it would be called, kisses you before you go to work and says, have a nice day, how is that affecting the people one house over?
Well,
or 10 houses over? Or a state over? It's like, that's what I don't get. And then they're going to have this pedestrian attitude, well, I don't care, I'm really not involved in that, that's what the church does, I just pay my... That blows my mind.
None of my Mormon friends are under the impression that my getting married to a man would affect their marriage in any way.
Right.
I don't know a single one.
But their church spends $8 million.
Is it $8 million?
There was $8 million in California. That was, what, 2 years ago? How long ago was
It was a
it?
couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's done. I mean, now it's done, so who cares? But, it's a nice waste of money from the church where they could have been spending that money, feeding the sick, clothing the poor, blah, 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 doing the things that are supposed to be like the Christian,
Right.
Ideas.
Why not lead by example and actually help the poor instead of stopping gay people from getting married?
It's like, if you're going to accept the institution, if you're going to say, okay, I understand these are your belief systems and so on and so forth, then keep it within the church. What do you, if that's the case, do it the way that they do it, like you described your friend that got excommunicated rumored excommunicated because of the fact that he had gay friends, even though he was not acting on his beliefs. Mm-hmm. It's like, if you want to govern that within your church, that's fine. That's the rule you want to set, and that's how you want to manage it, that's fine. That's your church, and that affects the people
your club,
that decide to be part of your club, and so on and so forth. But you don't need to spend $8 million in California to try and be like, no, but all the rest of you who are not even in our club, you still can't do it because we don't like it so much. Right. You can't do it, even though you're outside of our purview. That's where it's like, mind your own damn business. Right. It doesn't affect you.
And I wonder about that with my Mormon friends. Mm-hmm. I wonder if they think about that when they come over to see me or what have you.
Well, and here's the other side note to that. Maybe you just have really good friends. Because, like, I sat here during Prop 8 and I watched people down at the temple, nice clean-cut Mormon boys just sitting there and saying the most bigoted, horrible things, about gays in this very passive way of like, well, I don't understand why people don't just let me have my beliefs. They're evil. I don't understand. Why are you mad at me?
Why aren't you tolerant of
for
my
hating
intolerance?
these horrible, evil people? My book says they're evil.
Right.
You know, and it's like the worst part about it was like I saw a YouTube video of like the same people where they edited out every time that they said gay and replaced it with black, and it was just awful.
Right.
Because you were just like, oh my god, it's so horrible.
Right.
And they don't self-identify that they're saying just as horrible things as were said in the 40s? Civil rights movement, when was that?
60s.
60s? Jesus. I don't know history. So we'll say 60s. Also assume that's true. You know, but yeah, these things that you would hear say in the 60s where we want to keep everything separate, and then you hear it again in 2010.
Right. Because
and
people
you're just
don't
like, oh my god, how do you not realize?
Well, and that's I mean, this is sort of outside the bounds of the show, but that's one of the things that came up in Prop 8 is that a lot of people who voted down gay marriage in the Prop 8 were black. And they don't even make the connection that it's sort of the same thing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a failing of our educational system, that we all don't know even recent history as well as we should. You know, and that's the black religious community is kind of an animal unto itself, because that is really in something ingrained in the community. But I've seen whole discussions on why are there not more black atheists and things like that, and so that's kind of its own animal. But the fact that people at all don't make this connection of this is kind of the same, this is a civil rights issue,
right?
And separate but equal is in fact not equal at all, amazes me. But it does. It actually really sets my teeth on edge. This idea that Mormon people are like. The ones I know were like, well, that's not what my church stands for, but they pay their tithing, or they don't think about it. I think that people who have the standpoint of I don't think about it, I don't worry about it, that's just what the church does, that's not what I'm about. I think that is absolutely inexcusable. You should think about it, and if you don't agree with it, then you need to stand up and go to your church leaders and say, I don't agree with it. Or you need to get out of the church. Or you need to figure out, okay, I do agree with it. And you need to be for that. But this is like, well, I'm not really for the Catholic Church burning witches, but I can't be bothered to go over there and say anything. They'll burn my ass too. Are you kidding? It just that's apathy is really dangerous in this respect. It's what allows these institutions to go on prosecuting this kind of stuff, and I don't think that's acceptable.
Right.
I think humans need to be better than that.
Yeah. I feel like throughout this discussion, obviously you and I are more charged even about this than you are, which I find kind of funny, because maybe we're just assholes at our base level. But like, where do you fall in your atheist spectrum? Obviously, we seem to come off as militant atheists, but you seem like you're a lot more just okay with your life. You're actually better, because I guess maybe we're getting in people's face now, but you seem a little more subdued in a good way. Where you're just a little more open to letting people have their beliefs.
I understand that people are people, and I understand that. Something that Chris and I have discussed at length is tribal mentality. Is that this is something that comes into play all the time. If you can find a way to exclude someone from your group, you're probably going to do it. It's just something that's built into us. It's something that we have to overcome by consciously thinking about our decisions and what we do. And I think this is what you're touching on with
discussion.
Yeah.
Critical thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's confront it, and if we confront it and your religion is right, and we need to burn gay people at the stake. Well, I don't think that's the case, but maybe I'll be proven wrong.
Right.
And that'll be a bad day for you. But
right. Right.
But so far, no one has been able to show to me that this is the case, and that I should believe that that's what we should do. And that's not even what Mormons believe.
Don't worry, if God asks me to burn you at the stake, I'm going straight to hell. Because
I appreciate that.
That's actually
just we'll listen to all the good bands, because that's where they're all going.
Hell yeah.
Right. But that's actually one of the points that I've heard made before, is that if you could show me the proof that your God, and let Mormon God or Christian God or Muslim God or pick a God, you know, if you could show me that that God is true, let's say Christian God, he's a jerk.
He is.
And I have no interest in worshiping a jerk.
Right.
I will admit, yep, you proved him. There he is. He's real, but he's a jerk.
Right.
If that is really the proper context of his character. So, no, you're right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't join the bandwagon. but it becomes important that we have that discussion of, okay, if he's real, show me.
Right.
And then let's talk about it.
So, well, to finish answering your question, I feel as if it's important to approach the issue from many fronts. That's one of the reasons why I agreed to come to this show, is because I think that this is a very important way to approach people and to make them think. That said, it's not usually the kind of thing that I do. Occasionally I'll do protests, especially for things like Prop 8, because that was wrong. But if I live my life in a tolerant manner and I show people that I'm a good person just by example without having to talk about it, I think that this sways opinions just as much.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the big reasons we do this show is I mean, we don't really want to go out and like browbeat every Mormon until he converts. We just want these different opinions and this basically, like you described, you know, if you live a good life and just be a good person, that basically becomes evidence, you know, and that's what we're trying to present here. It's just this evidence of basically just reality, so that people will educate themselves and continue to move that direction, because it really feels more like we don't have to teach you to be like us. Right. We just have to give you enough information and you're going to fall into our camp anyway. You know, because you're just, once you are educated to a certain level, once you understand or think about things in a more expansive way, you know, a lot of your hatreds and things go out the window. Because once you can actually be apathetic and actually look at other people's lives through their eyes and just accept that fact and just see certain things, be like, oh, okay, I can understand that, or it doesn't affect me, and so on and so forth. And then suddenly that need to hate goes away. And that's all we're really looking for, because that's the religions divide people. They put people in camps, they put people in groups, they try and say what's good and what's bad, and just divide with that. Whereas we just want to have it be like, you know what, you're you, and if I like you, we'll hang out and be friends. And if I don't, you'll find other people to go hang out with, and that's all that matters. If I don't like you, it certainly doesn't mean I have to beat you up or kill you or do any of that. If I don't like you, then I just go do something else. I don't care. You know, it's not a big deal, and that's just the overall hope. And you seem to have a really good approach. I mean, we do sound aggressive and militant, but really it is about education and just outreach to other people.
Critical discussion.
Exactly.
Anyways, we are probably over time.
Actually, I think we're probably fine. Do you want me to find out?
We're just gonna call it quits here, and we're gonna go to our post-game discussion. Please remember, you can join the conversation at outcastinzion.com, and that's it.
Okay, well, wait, real quick. Do you have any final points without us interrupting that you want to make, or anything you want to say before we close up the show today?
Not really.
No.
Free Tibet.
Free Tibet. Very nice. All right. Now you can close us out.
We're done.
All right, Outcast out.